Welcome to Active Love Adoptions podcast. I'm your host, Mackenzie Love, and today we have Heidi co-hosting with me.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, Allison Olsen. She is here to talk about her books that she has written about adoption. She's also an adoptee and adoptive parent. So we're so excited to listen to your perspective on adoption today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I am obviously adopted and an adoptive parent. I was born in 1979. So my adoption was an infant domestic adoption through an agency, and it was closed, which is, the vast majority of adoptions back in 1979. And then our daughter, it's very similar. So infant domestic through an agency, but the major difference is that it's open. And we love and cherish her birth mom and her full extended birth family. And what I was noticing as we were preparing and getting ready for her birth and adoption, when I looked at the current books out there, they hadn't moved with the times, right? So like 90% of adoptions are open these days.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking through these books, the birth mom was almost never illustrated. I found one other than mine where she was illustrated, and she's a main character, as you're well aware, Mackenzie.
Yes.
And then if she was even mentioned, to me, the books felt imbalanced. And when I say imbalanced, in the triad, there are, what I like to say, everyone comes to adoption with struggle, right? And so, and love. So struggle and love. My issue with the books were, so some of them were clearly written by people totally outside of our triad. So those were red flags to me all over the place. Even sometimes the titles, you'd be like, chosen. Ooh, that's not current positive adoption language,
Right.
But outside of those, what I found was most common was the imbalance. So it would be likely written by an adoptive parent. So it starts with just like all the love the adoptive parents have for the child, etc. And if the birth mom was mentioned, it would mention her struggle and not her love. And I did not like that imbalance, because they did not mention all the struggle the adoptive parents had,
right,
that led them to the decision. And so it was important to me that it was focused on all of the love that surrounded the young adoptee. And so that's why I called it Surrounded by Love.
Yeah.
So, and there's one thing I was going to tell you guys that is my Easter egg that I don't share on every podcast, and not everybody knows about my book. So this is a special treat I'll tell for you guys. So this is a special thing that my illustrator did. So I picked my illustrator for many, many reasons. Obviously, I love her illustrations. They're gorgeous.
They are.
But her brother is adopted. So she also has a tie to adoption. And so when I would say things about emotion, she could capture that very complex, very sensitive topic of adoption, emotions, because she has direct lived experience with it. So my Easter egg in here is that if you notice, the birth mom is always in her color, right? The adoptive mom's always in her color. So the birth mom's like a pinkish color, and then the adoptive mom's a yellow, the adoptive dad is in blue. And you'll notice when you see the young adoptee, she is always wearing all of those colors to represent the impact that they all have on her for her life.
That's cute.
That's beautiful.
So
that's an awesome Easter egg.
I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there were a couple other things with the book too. I wanted it to not be this other child is surrounded by love, that you adoptee are surrounded by love. So I wrote it in first person. So I have, there's an owl that you see in the book, but it's this little plushie right here. There's an owl that's telling the story, and they're saying, hey, I've flown all around, I've seen all of these things, and I watched, your adoptive parents be, wanting, wishing, and praying for you. I watched your birth mom love you when you were in her belly and make this big decision. And so it's like in first person, it also neutralizes the decisions, right? So as I said before, like the imbalance, I'll just show you 2 other pages real quick.
Please. Yes.
Well, because then it helps to explain like the passion behind it, because again, being adopted and then understanding how amazing it is to have this relationship with her birth family, I wanted to make sure that she was represented appropriately in the books. So there's a night scene here where the adoptive parents, the hopeful adoptive parents, they wished on shooting stars, they meditated, and they prayed. And this is an outline of a baby in the stars. I have the same thing. So again, to equalize this decision where she is lovingly putting her hand on her belly, looking up at the stars, and there's equally a baby in the stars. She wished on shooting stars, she meditated, and she prayed. And so it just equalizes between the two.
Yeah.
This big decision that was made, taking out one struggled, one loved, they both loved. It was a big decision on both parts. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it already. We do need a book like that. I feel like we need something that is a voice for all parties in adoption. And that's exactly what you did. And the illustrations.
That was my goal.
Yeah. The illustrations are beautiful too. And I love that, her brother was adopted too. That's kind of how it is at our agency. We're all touched by adoption in one way or another. And I feel like it makes a huge difference. I feel like people are a lot more passionate about it, and they're more compassionate too to those involved, because we've been through it. So
exactly. You only know when you have a lived experience. Yeah,
exactly. Yep, exactly. And you had another book come out.
I did.
On October 24th.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that book as well?
Yes. So when I, decided that I was going to write the first book, my main mission was to change the adoption narrative, right?
Yes.
So, so I had said like the imbalance of books, but there was also an undertone across these books of, oh, you should feel so lucky, adoptee. And that's not how I saw it at all. And that's not, when you actually talk within the triad, it's not how most of us feel, but it is the perception that has happened outside of our community, right?
Yeah.
And so I am truly on a mission to change the adoption narrative from the lucky child to the loved child.
Yes.
And so the first book did a good job of focusing on the adoptee so that they could build self-esteem and confidence in being adopted, understanding that they were loved from both sides before they were born even. That's how much they were loved. But then I kept thinking about it again, growing up as an adoptee, there is almost no literature for people outside of the adoption community. So we have made great strides. Within the triad, we have made great strides. Over 90% of adoptions are open these days. We are well aware of adoption trauma. There's better education for prospective adoptive parents going through going through the home studies. All of that has improved. Outside of our triad, outside of our adoption community, I would go so far as to say it is like the 1950s with comments that I get. Yep, you guys are in total agreement. Okay.
Oh yeah, we totally agree.
Yes. I mean, things they say to me when they find out I'm an adoptee, where are your real parents? And then the real extreme ones that I'll get to, of like, well, good thing they didn't abort you. I mean, I just like, I'm just trying to get my groceries, dude.
Yeah.
Like, why did you feel like you needed to say that to me? So there's that. And then when they find out I'm an adoptive parent, there's other new, offensive, not current positive adoption language that I had never heard as an adoptee. So it's like, whoa, it's like opening my eyes. People will come up to me. They will thank me. Thank
We've talked
you
about this before.
Yeah. Yes. Like, oh, what a lucky child. And I'm like, you do not understand. And pending the person and pending the closeness, right, of that person. So
Yeah.
stranger that's just checking me out at the grocery store, I'll give just like a quick, like, nope, she's not lucky. We're the lucky ones, and walk away, right?
Yeah.
But someone that I actually know that I will see repeatedly. So there was actually a teacher at her daycare who was very excited for us. These things don't come from bad places, bad intentions. It comes from lack of education for people with good
Ignorance.
intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Ignorance, yeah.
exactly.
And so she was saying these things and kept referring to our daughter as lucky. And I pulled her aside one day and I said, no, we know her birth family. They love her very much. If she had grown up with them, she would have been loved.
Yeah.
We were in a huge line of hundreds of hopeful adoptive parents just waiting to be selected by a birth mom. If she had selected any other of those families, she would have been loved. We were the lucky ones that got chosen to have this amazing responsibility to raise someone else's child. We are the lucky ones. No matter what would have happened in her world, she would have been loved.
Yeah.
And she still is loved. So I'm like, please don't say she's lucky. This is not the circumstance, and so I
Yeah.
think it's like people don't think about it from that frame of mind,
Perspective.
right? Yeah.
No, as you're saying that, it's like, yeah, that's common sense. But the way you put it it's so easy to understand. It's beautiful. And we talk about that all the time. That's what Heidi says, because she's an adoptive mom. And she's like, everyone always would tell her,
Yeah, well, they make you out to be some saint because you adopted this child, and
Yeah.
yours is better than mine. I always say I adopted for purely selfish reasons. They were on my part. I wanted to be a mother. So I'm the one that benefited from them. I don't know how much they benefited from me. But at the time, but when you're going through it, you're not thinking about, oh, I'm going to give this child this better life and this better this and that. That's not why we do it. We want a child to love and care for and to be mothers or parents.
And I think that honesty is important, right? And you're like, maybe it's not the best way to say it. It is the best way to say it because that was honest, right? And so some adoptees, adult adoptees, get upset when adoptive parents are not that honest, when they're saying things like, well, I've always wanted to adopt and blah, blah, blah. Either way, it is because we wanted to expand our family. Either way, like no matter how you look at it. And so my mom was always honest, like my mommy and dad, they were always honest with me, like you were just now. And I think that that's always the way to go in adoption. Honesty, openness.
Yes.
All of that. And especially like at an age appropriate level.
Yes,
and so,
for sure.
so my thought was, how best do you educate these people outside of the adoption community? And I thought, you know what? It's very difficult to educate adults. I'm like, who do you start with?
You start with kids. I love it. Yes.
You start with kids.
Yes.
And so, like I said, this is literally one of the first of its kind on the market. There are a few books out there. So most of the books, as we know, are to try to educate adoptees about their own personal story. There are some out there that's, hey, you're preparing for a sibling. There's one out there recently that I've seen that's preparing a cousin, but there's nothing that is preparing all of the above, right? A friend, someone who has no one currently in their life that's adopted, but a parent or teacher or librarian wants the kid to be well educated about different diverse ways that families are created. This is the book. And so it's called Learning About My Friend's Adoption. And it starts off just like any kid would. It's the dinner table. He's at the dinner table with his family and he's like, I learned something about my friend. Like she's just like you and me, but she told me that she's adopted. And so I asked her about it. And then it does a flashback and it goes through their conversation. So it is the questions that I was asked always as a child, and then the answers back. And I do a lot of intentional things in the book to normalize stuff. So there's one point where he's like scratching his head. And he's like, well, do you love both of your families? And she giggles and she says, of course, I love both of my families, just like you love your family. So that it can like just have kids grow up thinking, oh yeah, okay, yeah, here's that one. Look, she's like just cute giggling. He's like
I
scratching
love
his
that.
head. Yeah.
So
And
cute.
so that again, in the end, it can just teach them and truly answer the questions before the child even has them, right? Because they're the most common questions that you get as an adoptee.
Yeah.
And there's finally a resource. I also had I did a little focus group before I released this book. And this gal joined who was a neighbor of somebody else who was in the focus group. And she said, thank you for this book, because she said, I am ill-equipped to explain to my child how my neighbor, who was never pregnant, just brought a baby home. And she's like, I keep trying to say it and everything I'm saying, I'm stumbling over my words. Well, blah, 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 adoption. And like, this can talk to it in a child's language, and help to explain them and educate them at least to a certain point. And then there could be other conversations, etc. But another secret goal of this book is, again, to take some burden off the adoptee. So now, as I'm talking to you, because I feel like we are the tripod, right? With us,
yes,
right? With the adoptive mom, birth mom, adoptee.
Yeah.
We are the tripod. So now, this probably will not blow your minds, but it does to a lot of people that we don't think about the full burden is on the adoptee to educate. The full burden. All of their friends, sometimes even their teachers, like it is on them to educate. I mean, I remember having conversations when I was young, trying to explain adoption to adults.
Yeah.
But for sure, all of their friends, it is their responsibility.
It is kind of blowing my mind because it's true. It's like, I, as you were talking, I was sitting there thinking about my kids, because I married the birth father and he has 4 other siblings that are his full siblings. And to explain to them why he was like, why I placed him, and to try to tell my story to my young children, it gets difficult. And then like, we have a very open adoption. And so every time they get together, even my daughter will ask him questions and be like, so what's it like? Or, and it's not like ill intentions. She's just curious. But to have something like that, a tool and a book for her to read and be like, okay, this, even for her, it may be a little bit different. We might have to, change a few things, but just to get that main dialogue out there to answer her questions is huge. So unfortunately, it is blowing my mind. And I'm so glad you did write that book.
It would be difficult for you, I think.
Yeah. Well, and
I think it's a little bit,
it is. It's definitely different for sure.
To be in.
Yeah. But as you were talking, I was just thinking, I'm like, I mean, even my kids, like, because my daughter, she loves Colin. And so she's always like, I have another older brother. And she always talks about him. And even her friends are like, what? Like, what does that mean? And like, how does that work? And so to have a tool like that, it's huge. It's huge.
And then it just gives people a place to point people to,
right,
in addition to the help you have time to give. It's just an additional resource and a place to go. And I do have these books listed and kind of an adoptees pick on top children's adoption books on my website, as well as I have a whole separate blog on children's adoption books written by adoptees. I also think that is important to make sure that like the connection of where they're coming from. And that's all on my website, ouradoptionbooks.com.
Okay. And I'll link that below as well.
That would be great.
Yeah. Cause I want to start reading them too.
Yeah.
Cause I want to be as educated as possible too. I think like now that I've finally gone through kind of like a healing era where I was able to just accept things and to move forward. Now I'm like, I just want to educate myself and be the best person I can for my adoptive son and the children I have now. And, the father, the birth father, who also struggles and has questions too. So yeah, thank you for having all these tools and for doing what you're doing and writing these books and changing the narrative. It's huge. And you are making a huge difference. And I know you're going to go on to make a huge difference on many people's lives.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's
kind
what
of why
I'm.
Thank you for
Yeah,
what
we
you're doing.
started with this podcast so
Yeah.
that we could get communication going outside of the triad, you
Yeah.
call it. So, because a lot of people do still live in the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and my 4 that I adopted are African American. So we got anywhere we went, of course, we didn't fit in anywhere. And so I always tell people that they kind of treated us like community property almost type of thing, where it doesn't matter where you're at, what you're doing, they feel like they can use you, come up and ask you any question. How's this happen? How did that work?
Personal story
Oh my
questions,
gosh,
I'm sure.
yes.
Mhm.
A
At the
slew of
grocery
things.
store.
Everywhere,
Mhm.
everywhere we went.
Yeah.
So, and the hurtful thing about your real parents and that kind of stuff
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
like you addressed, I have a huge issue with too,
Yeah.
but all 4 of mine, they're semi-open, but we don't have contact with any of them.
Yeah.
The birth parents. So,
Yeah.
and mine are all adults.
Right. And you had mentioned that you had a closed adoption growing up.
Yep.
And so what made you want to do open adoption, like promote open adoption? Sorry, my words are all over the place. Am I even making sense?
No, you make sense.
You made perfect sense.
No, I feel like I'm all over the place.
She's always hard on herself. But
I am, but I also I feel like I can talk in person all day long. I get on put on the spot and I'm like, huh, what? But no, I appreciate you being nice. But yeah, so having a closed adoption, what made you want to promote open adoption in your books and what you're doing right now?
Yes, because of the damage of closed adoption, right? So open adoption. So first I'm going to start with a definition for your listeners. I know that you guys likely know this, but I am actually I still get surprised by some even adoptive parents that do not know the true definition of it, right? Because I've heard people incorrectly say, oh, we have lost contact, like the birth mom has stopped replying to us, so we're in a closed adoption. That is incorrect.
Right.
So a closed adoption means that the courts have legally sealed the name of the birth parents on the birth certificate from the adoptee. I want to make sure that it is clear what I mean. I am a 44-year-old professional taxpayer that cannot and does not have access to my own original birth certificate. So when you hear adoptees being upset about this is something we should rally around and support to get legislation changed. I don't know who we're trying to hide, protect, or prevent. You talk to birth moms, they don't want this closed. You talk to adoptees, they don't want this closed. You talk to adoptive parents, they're like, why would I not want my child to know this information?
Yeah, know where they came from.
So who is it that's trying to hide this, and why is it so difficult to change legally? So that is the difference. So then open is a spectrum. So I like to say it's kind of like a dimmer switch, right? Closed is completely turned off, but then open is the spectrum from having names all the way over to having a really deep relationship. Like they live down the street from you, and birth grandparents babysit the kids on the weekends, right? And then anywhere in between, right? So I would say ours is probably somewhere in the middle because we live several states away. So we talk all the time. We send texts, texts and pictures back and forth, get updates on her brothers, on how her birth mom's doing, how extended family's doing. All of that. And then we are able to go out and visit only once a year right now. It's just kind of difficult because we got 2 kids and one's young and stuff, but I would of course love to visit much more. But that's where we're at on the spectrum. But I think people think closed means, oh, well, this relationship isn't strong right now, but I just want to make sure people understand the difference and to to be held back, like, so literally, like, for my tax dollars to pay for people and systems and structure to prevent me from getting this information is that's crazy. And
Yeah.
that is a right that we all should have. And it's changing state by state. So just, that's the only thing I would say is to, please look into supporting your state and opening up those documents. We all, as a adoption community, have come to the point where we know open adoption is healthier and better for the child. So why are we restricting these adult adoptees from getting their information? So that's just the only piece that I would say there. So that's why I am a huge proponent. And I want to celebrate it. I want to celebrate open adoption. I want to show that we love her birth mom and that we love her extended family. And so that it normalizes this new version of family, right? There's so many different ways families can be created. Like, you look at Modern Family, and literally what Modern Family did was they looked at the United States and they said, yeah, there's all these different things happening in the United States, and we want this show to be reflective of it. And that's what it is. And so that was my big thing, was just making sure to normalize that. And so that everyone could see, all of that, the loving relationship that we collectively have with this new extended family.
Right. No, and I think that's very important. And I have an open adoption, and I think for all parties involved, it's very healing to have that open adoption. We can answer any questions we have almost immediately. And when we're having hard days or when we need to talk to each other, me and the adopted mom are very close, and we do that.
Good.
We can go back and forth. My question for you with the closed adoption, I know that there are a lot of closed adoptions, and this is just from what I know.
Well, we still do closed adoptions.
Yeah, well, and
it's very small.
It's mostly
very
based
small
on the birth mom.
That's correct.
And we try to usually tell them to do open, even though they don't want it now, because down the line, you might want to have that communication and that openness.
Yeah. Right. It's rare to get through an agency. It's usually through a lawyer. So it would be a request, I usually say like a demand, but it would be like a very serious request from a birth mom, as Heidi was saying. And then usually it's through an attorney, because most agencies want to kind of stay away from it.
Yeah.
For
stay away from
closed
adoptions.
Closed adoptions. Yeah. So that's why it's like 90% are open. And, a lot of adoptions are through foster care. A lot of adoptions.
My hair is stuck in here. So I'm like,
that's hilarious.
Right now. I should have done that before. I'm like, why is it like kind of muffled? Oh, that's why. Okay. Sorry. Keep going.
Hilarious.
I'm so sorry.
No worries. But yeah. And a lot of adoptions are through foster care, where they obviously know the family's names, etc. So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like closed adoptions, I mean, you would know better than I do, because you work more closely with people that want closed adoptions, like the birth moms. What are the reasons that they want closed adoptions, even in this day and age right now?
Well, I think that for them, I mean, we still get birth moms who don't even want to select the family.
Right.
So that version of closed, where they're not picking a family or anything. So, I think that they feel like it'll be easier for them in the long term if they just don't have that, because it keeps that wound open.
Part of, separate.
I think it's old mindset. So there's probably a mom, a grandma involved, giving them kind of the old,
telling them.
Yeah, like what they used to tell, in the baby scoop era in the 60s, like, you'll forget about it, you'll move on with your life, stuff like that. And I don't think they have any concept of emotionally what's in the future for them, and so I'm glad, Heidi, to hear that you're trying to coach them to say, hey, there might be a chance in the future you want this. So I think you should move to
but like you said, closed is cut and dry.
Yeah.
So open, you can have all different degrees of that. So, and for me,
and maybe safety reasons too.
Yeah. And for me, when I used to take the adoptive family line and tell people, I said that even with the adoptive families that would want to do closed, I go, you might want to stay a little open, because if later on something comes up with the child and their history, you need to know their background. a little bit more in depth, then we can't call the birth mom and ask her anything.
Right. It's
No.
completely closed.
It's closed.
Yeah.
I go, there's
And if
nothing.
it-
Or if she called us and said, this came up in our family line, we thought our adoptive family needs to know about it.
Right.
We can't do anything with
can't.
it. It
Yep,
just
exactly.
sits there.
Yeah. Which
So,
makes zero sense, honestly.
yeah.
Well, if you guys want to know if this helps out, you know, Heidi, with when you're talking with them,
Mhm.
the adoptees 100% want to know.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Like there is
Yes,
no
they do.
question.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, even telling them, so because I talk a lot to adoptive parents and like hopefully adoptive parents that just they don't understand yet, right? They may not
Yeah.
have been touched by adoption. They don't understand where it is versus what like old movies and stuff show or
Mhm.
what they heard from grandma or some aunt. And how
Yeah.
much it's changed since then. But I think if you ever get those questions, I mean, you can even refer them back to this podcast to say,
Yes.
like, no,
Yeah.
every time we talk to an adoptee, there's not an adoptee that I am aware of that ever would want it to be closed.
Yeah.
Right. We've had a few people on the podcast that have come on and been like, we have searched high and low.
Correct.
It's been a miserable journey.
Correct.
And in fact, my friend Megan, I hope she's okay with me sharing this, but she spent years trying to find.
Correct.
And she had people come to her and say, yeah, I'm your cousin, or yeah, this, but there was no proof. There was no document. You
Yeah.
know, they were going off of what their blood tests were telling them. And so they could be like very distant cousins, or it could be, you know what I mean? Like they were trying
Yeah.
to figure it all out. And so with that perspective, I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't we want it to be open? Why wouldn't we want to know
Exactly.
or share and
Well,
tell these people where they came from?
We do actually. We've had a birth mom who has done closed once before and came back and wanted to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Years
Really?
later. Yes. Yeah. So that does happen. And another thing I was going to say too is that the kids hit a certain age and they look for that birth mom, but is that birth mom prepared to be found? So
Right.
that's another.
But I feel like
issue
if you're
because-
going to place a child for adoption, you have to know that that's something that might come up in the future.
That's correct. And usually
and it
through,
could. Yeah.
yeah, through all the research that has been done, it's
Yeah.
like very rare that a birth mom doesn't want that. Like very rare. Like I
Yeah.
just finished reading American Baby, and I think it was like 2 in, I would have to look at the number, but like 2 in 200,000 that said they didn't
Wow.
want to give. Yeah. So it's very, very small in that case.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of it comes down to education.
Yeah.
100%.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if they only understood how it felt as an adoptee. So I had a secondary screening recently for breast cancer. So I had a bad first
I'm so
mammogram,
sorry.
had to go in for a second. And what are they asking me? What do you think they ask me in every single room I moved to? What's your medical history? And I said, don't
Right.
know, adopted. And so that alone is critical to folks. And in fact,
Yeah.
in that book, American Baby, the main guy that they were talking about, you know, died at, I think 54. His biological dad died at 56. And if he had known that he had these certain things, and literally, like if he had just known diabetes ran in the family, he could have added decades to his life.
Right.
Well,
'Cause
see,
he
and,
could-
now-
So
and
true.
now- and nowadays, I
true.
think that even with the closed adoptions, initially when the adoptive family is shown medical background
Oh, that's good.
on
That's
the birth
good, but
But if
mom.
that's
something comes
that's
up
to
later,
that point.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's a generic. So
Right.
that doesn't change it
Continue
if
as you
something
learn.
Yeah.
yes
Yeah.
if something else came up. I mean,
Yeah.
my first adopted daughter, the birth mom had it closed with her.
Okay.
We did a closed adoption with her, but then my second one was born 10 and a half months later. And with Kendra, she's like, no, I want open, because now we had 2 of her
okay.
daughters.
Mhm.
So, but we have contacted the agency, tried to find her
Yeah.
or them, and we have not been able to do so. One benefit with the girls is they have each other.
Mhm.
They're biological siblings, so they can kind of
That's
look
good.
at each other and see what
Yeah.
their biological sibling would look like if that was a thing. But
Yeah.
That is important
Yeah.
to
It is.
adoptees. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very important to adoptees. Yeah.
And Allison, do you have any resources of people who do have closed adoptions that are looking for their birth parents? Like maybe you have a better idea of places that they can look, or, I mean, I know social media is huge on I'm on a ton of birth mom groups, and I feel like there's always one person just looking for their child, or,
Yeah, there's tons of adoption search and reunion groups. Let me see here. I'm on one on Facebook, but yeah. I mean, so the biggest thing is you need to know which state you were adopted from before you
Right.
start into any of that. So make sure
Yeah.
that you've got your paperwork, or that whatever was told to you is accurate. And
Like
I have
where
to
you were born. Is
where
that what
you
you're saying?
were
Or the
adopted
agency.
from. Yeah, the agency, and then the birth and adoption, because sometimes if you're adopted in a different state, there's a
Yeah,
different
so yeah,
state
because
rules.
Right.
there's some of our adoptions that we do that are born in another state, but then they get the
Yeah.
adopted families from another state.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then we have to
And
do
the
the
legal
interstate
paperwork. Yeah.
compact in
Yeah.
order
And
to
both of
transfer.
those states' laws matter
Mhm.
Yes.
in that
Yes.
case. Yeah.
For
And that's
sure. Yeah.
the first question that these places will ask you. Now we are benefited by science. So,
Right.
when you're old enough and feel comfortable enough to do, the 23andMe's and Ancestry, that can really get you pretty far.
Yeah.
But it's the other stuff where, you have to go through these other channels and try to find
Put
folks,
the pieces
especially
together.
put the pieces together.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm not good at putting the pieces.
Oh, I am. I'm
I'm
like,
good
let's
with that.
go,
Well,
detective.
then I'll give you my girls' biological parents'
Let's do it.
names. I even
There
have
you
their
go.
names.
See if you have their names. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's find them.
And
Well,
I
and
looked down
there's
on Facebook to look, and I'm like, how do I pinpoint if this is the person?
there's also
messaging.
private detectives that'll do it
Yeah.
too. Back in the day, they were the main place that you would go to. And for mine, and I know I talked about that, I wasn't going to talk about my reunion stuff, but I'll just say for a little bit, the paperwork at the time, this was about 15 years ago,
Mhm.
in the state of Illinois, was terrible. So there was a paid, and it was a brand new thing. So it was like better than what had existed before.
Yeah.
There was a registry where I could give them my name to put on the registry. If they found that my birth mom was already on the registry, no problem. We'd be connected right away. Of course, this is a brand new thing. Her name was not on there. They don't send out alerts to anyone to say,
Right.
go put your name on there. You have to know and research and do this stuff.
I think I heard about that. It was quite a while ago, right?
This was a while ago. Again, this is Illinois. So every state's different.
It's different. Okay.
Every state's different. And then I was assigned a social worker. So just imagine how it feels. I'm on the phone with this person who has everything in front of them and won't share it with
frustrating.
me. So terrible, you guys. Like, again,
yeah, it is. It's awful.
Like our system is broken. And so I'm saying that on here because I think it's helpful for adoptive parents, people that are thinking about becoming adoptive parents, etc. Like, it's helpful for people to have that background, because sometimes people will follow adoptees on social media, etc., and not understand where some anger and frustration is coming from. And I just think it's important for folks to know that these laws were built to shelter us from critical information to us and us alone.
Yeah, and I think that's the adoptee's perspective. Yes,
most definitely.
You guys got lost in that process because it was more about birth mom and adoptive families than it was.
That's correct.
Later down the line that you might want to find out more information, and nobody addressed that as a
And they but just to be clear, they keep updating these laws and they keep building these structures.
Yeah, and it's usually people that know nothing about adoption.
About adoption.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
always
crazy. We don't understand it, but our agency will always get calls because they're trying to pass something, and we've got to go and fight something or do something because
we're very on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, because they want to pass something that is like, what are you guys even thinking?
Yeah.
And who even thought this would be a good idea? You should appoint someone to learn about adoption and
before making those decisions.
Or or ask people's opinion before you go. And sometimes they don't even care your opinion.
No.
That's true.
We've had
Unfortunately.
that happen before where they asked questions and stuff and went ahead with what they were going to do anyway.
Right.
So it's crazy maddening.
Yeah.
It is. Well, and the thing is too, like, especially for anybody that's listening that, you know, is on the wait list, right? For your adoption agency. I just want to, as an adoptee, I just want to relay how important this relationship is with the birth family. And then as my other side, as the adoptive parent side, how shocking it is how beneficial that relationship is to the adoptive parent. And I don't think it's like, we don't think about that when we go into it. Like, if anything, we're thinking, oh, we know this is important to the child. We will do this for the child. Just like if your kid's into a sport, let's be honest, that either you guys don't like, or you know
Yes.
nothing about, and you're like, okay, I don't know about swim meets. I'll just sit here in this kind of like really hot, you know,
humid
pool
area
and watch whatever's happening here, you know, for 5
Yeah.
hours. You know, so you're like, okay, I'll support this, you know, but
Mhm.
then the healing that it does to see their love for your child. And when I say your, I always say like the collective your, because
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
like our child.
Mhm.
And so it is healing too for adoptive parents to see that. And the love, you guys, oh my gosh, I'm going to say this and try not to cry. Our last visit. So the one thing I didn't mention before is we have an older child. So we have an older biological child. And you know, so we navigate that a lot, right? That she's not adopted. So she, like, you know, there's extra family for your sister, whatever. But we don't usually try to be like, she has extra family, but you don't. We don't say it like that. We just call them our family, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this last visit, they asked if our youngest daughter's brothers, if they could call her sister, her older daughter. And I was like,
Yes,
like,
please.
yes, I love this. It's like the
Yes.
best. And
Yeah.
we just love them so much. And so it's one thing, it's like you think about, you're like doing it for one reason, and then it's like so healing all around. It's a really positive thing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I feel the same way. My birth son, he has a little brother, and we always treat him like he's our birth son too. We always get
Oh,
him
I love
presents
it.
too. He always goes
Aw.
everywhere with us. And yeah, it's just more family to love, one big family. And
I
I think
love
it's
it.
really important. So, well,
I love
Allison,
it.
I feel like we didn't even touch what I wanted to talk to you about. So maybe
But
we
it's
can schedule
fun.
another time, because
Sure.
I feel like you're so educated in adoption, and you have a clear mind, and you're willing to look at everyone's perspectives and everyone's sides. And I think that's huge. And I think that's something, like you said before, sometimes, like, most podcasts are either for birth parents or adoptive parents or adoptees, and we're trying to do all of it and
Yeah.
educate and, you know,
Love
again,
it.
make one big happy family with
Yes.
everyone. So I would love to have you back on and to pick your brain even more,
That'd be
if you'd be
great.
willing.
Yeah, I'd
And
love to.
yeah, and I'm excited to share your books, and I'm going to buy them right
Yeah.
when we're done, because I would love to read them just to my kids, just to
Yeah.
educate them on, you know, a huge part of their life as well. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close?
No, I would just like to add where to find me.
Yeah.
So like I said, my website is ouradoptionbooks.com, and I tend to put resources and different material on there as well. My books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you know, anywhere you find books online. That's where
Perfect.
the books are. And then also, if anyone wants to follow me on social media, it's Kids Books by Allison Olsen on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Awesome. Yeah, and I will put all of that below too, so people can
Sounds
click
great.
on those.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Allison, thanks again for all that you're doing.
Yeah.
We
Thank
appreciate you
you.
coming on today.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Of course.